Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming. I hope your morning's going great. Thanks for coming to our second webinar for construction pollution prevention. Big shout out to the Washington Stormwater Center for hosting these webinars. If you haven't gone to their website, check them out. There's a lot of great activities and other events like this and just great resources. We've got some erosion and sediment control experts presenting. Both our speakers today know the construction and water production industry super well. So our first presenter is Josh McAllister, and Josh is an absolute pro with permitting, inspections, and erosion and sediment control processes. He is the owner of Clark County Cecil Services, and he's worked with a lot of builders on all types of projects. Our second presenter is Russell Betteridge, and Russell has been working in environmental protection since the early 90s. He's been working in public service and erosion and sediment control for over 20 years. And he's just got a lot of experience and knowledge in the construction industry. So he's helped with a lot of cleanup and a lot of training of other inspectors. So with that, you can get started, Josh. Thanks.
Thanks, Maddie. Hello, my name is Josh McAllister with Clark County Cecil Services, and this is good and bad examples of erosion and prevention practices to stay productive, maintain profitability, and to be compliant. I'm representing 10 areas I think a builder can concentrate on. Be prepared, educate, non-compliant trades, raise your expectations, manageable build pace, on-site management, backcharge, plan, recognize erosion control over sediment control, and make it a line item. Okay, be prepared. It amazes me to this day the things that pop up on a subdivision and the builder scrambles to protect themselves. This mess happened one day due to a trade not paying any attention to what was going on in the back of the truck. Not even when they turned around. This had gone on for a mile before they even hit the subdivision. Then the folks that can levy fines or worse, shut your site down, show up. And then things begin to get more serious. This builder was not prepared at all for this, as most builders I see. They don't have a company to call for emergency cleanup. The three gentlemen up on the grass in this picture are assessing fines and determining how long to shut the site down for. A year later, this spill was still in litigation. We did stop it from hitting the catch basin that's right below this soil, but it was just a complete mess. Here's another example of not being prepared. Same subdivision, same builder, unfortunately. The excavator wanted to drain his foundation, cut a nice hole in the side and relieved it right into a catch basin at about 10 o'clock at night. Since this builder shares this site with 3 other builders, this created quite the conversation. At the end of the day, we got it all cleaned up. This one act was very costly to the builder with money, time, and overall stress, and the other builders were not happy at all with it. So education. There seems to be an overall lack of education with how to keep a site compliant. We see this with trades, vendors, construction managers, the city and county inspectors themselves, unbelievably. I like that the thought was there with these bio bags, but I don't think any amount of stacking vertically will help protect this catch basin. Cleaning the sediment and changing the filter bags more frequently than once a month or once a year, as this seems to be, will greatly reduce the amount of sediment that enters the stormwater system. Okay, maybe a tarp underneath the soil might have been a better idea. Luckily, this is on flat ground and rain was not in forecast. Remember though, even if there's not rain, someone cleaning with a hose can still wash that soil down into the storm drain. Note the water in the driveway. Thanks, Russell. This one though was on a slope, rain was present, and as you can see, they're asking for trouble. A quick conversation with the landscaper was had, and we can only hope that they transferred this to the over 30 different crews they have. So they were all over doing this kind of stuff. These material handlers are probably the worst offending machines on a job site after an excavator. If the operator is not educated on erosion control, as you can see, he will create quite the situation, as you note the track out there with those huge wheels. Education certainly helps the construction manager recognize what is actually needed on site. As you can see from this print here, an engineer obviously did not take account for any actual site conditions, and how can they? They very rarely go out onto the site. In the green, they're calling for a silt fence to be installed on the high ground while completely ignoring the low ground on the left side, rather than spend money on wasted erosion measures and still being left open for liability. Educate the engineer on actual site conditions, or closely monitor the prints, alter them as site conditions change so that you can target actual points of exposure as we did above. I'm not promoting that every single employee in a company that is involved with building gets CECL certified. However, I strongly feel that erosion should be included in their work process. That won't, they won't do what they don't know to do. We happen to have all of our own employees get CECL certified by the king of erosion control. Anybody in this area will know this guy, Alex Zimmerman, who we are very lucky to have live in our area. Great guy, but I'm sure you all have an Alex Zimmerman in your areas. All right, using non-compliant trades, my favorite one. I've got non-compliant trades as one of the bullet points because I think we can all identify those trades that for whatever reason, large or small, do whatever they want. No amount of education, threats, etc., will convince them to do the right thing. Why use them, you ask? The builder hired these trades because of price point, relationships, availability. In our area, we simply don't have enough trade to do this work to go around. It almost seems like they hold their noses and just go with them. You can save yourself not only money, but frustration, fines, etc. Another draining of a foundation by a rogue excavator. You would not believe the things I see. They were there to do what they were hired to do, period. The excavator needed to drain the dig. What did they do? They dug a ditch, which worked great. Drains all the water, sediment, diesel fuel, etc. And as Russell in the next presentation will show you, there's so many contaminants in that, so that you have no idea. Right out of the dig out. What he did not care about was the obvious silt fence to protect the wetlands that are clearly marked by the green sign right past where they dug the ditch. Note the turbidity in the water above the fence. Back to what kind of trade you're going to use. We all know what happens when you go with a low bid, but is it worth it? Do you end up spending more to keep yourself compliant? Do you exhaust your already overworked on-site manager? Do you create the broken window syndrome? Do you have an on-site manager? These are questions a builder should take in consideration, amongst others, that will ultimately assist in your cost-saving approach. Raise your expectations. This is huge. So many builders will accept subpar work concerning erosion control. They don't realize that doing this usually prompts the inspecting jurisdiction to keep closer tabs on the build, which, as we all know, can slow your build pace and incur unneeded fines. The builder allows the excavator to sprinkle ground cover over his dig out, or no cover at all. I see that also. Then it rains with no protection of the lot, and this happens. Turbidity completely all around both of these catch basins right here in the street. I think we can do better here and expect more from at least 3 trades represented in this picture, probably more, but I could count 3. This is what catches an inspector's eye, heck, anybody's eye, really. This is a classic one. This silt fence is not only not installed correctly, there's really no reason to have it where it is. It's the highest part of the lot. And there's absolutely no reason to let this happen. This greatly increases your cost due to track out of concrete slurry and who knows what else, and tells anybody coming to your site that you allow anything to happen here. It should look like this, or better yet, even like this. This is the last line of defense before anything on your streets or on your site goes into the storm drain. Expect more from your trades and on-site management. Okay, manageable build pace. Here's a typical subdivision overlay that we work in every day. This one has one way in and one way out. Imagine if they started building this out, the build locations are spread all over the map. Since most builders allow sales to drive the build pace as well as the build location, this can and does lead to unneeded track out, loss of overall control of the site, as well as added erosion and cleanup costs. Becomes a madhouse. It creates a situation where the on-site manager, if you have one, has a very hard time keeping up with compliance, let alone their actual job of building the house. You essentially have all the trades crossing back and forth over the complex, completely exacerbating the potential for exposure. In these subdivisions, we see the builder choose the construction of the house as a higher priority than being compliant, thus raising the overall cost of the build. That's the key point. I don't think we realize you raise the overall cost of the build by doing that. We often encounter the result of this thought process at or near the end of the build. You see they've got money in the landscaping, it's bark, nice greenery here, and we're losing it here. Increasing cost to the bottom line, as well as dealing with embarrassing warranty work for the builder or the trade. Okay, on-site management, having somebody on site seeing what's going on. Some builders choose to cut costs by either not having someone around to guide the trades and keep them consistent, compliant, or not investing in ones they do have. Did this landscape company really have to stage this much topsoil out in the street? No. There are so many things that could be prevented by just having a person around to direct things. Trades do not have a lot of education on preventing erosion. They will clean anything from their tools, feet, etc., right out into the street, like we see here. And again, Russell in the next presentation will dive more into this. There's an incredible amount of pollutants that are on a job site. A well-trained construction manager would pick up on things like this concrete washout, well overdue to be cleaned out and freshened up. Let's get ahead of it. Or paying for silt fence over a high wall above a retention pond, then having an excavator backfill right through it, then paying for ground cover after the backfill before they can get back to be able to replace the original fence. The construction manager should have been involved here and prevented this waste of resources. The potential for issues are great, and if there is a strong on-site presence, it will save you lots in the end. Any pollutant from what was on that site in this picture is now collected in this pool of turbid water right in front of that van. The second that van leaves, he's going to pull everything out into the street and into the storm drain system. Walking, vehicles, etc. Backcharge. Going hand in hand with on-site management is backcharging. If you're not on site, you do not know who to backcharge when one of the trades cause issues. I remember one builder that we came and covered all the exposed soil almost daily for 2 weeks in one area behind 4 houses. This was all due to the excavation company in the beginning of the build not installing the rear drain correctly, and it had to completely re-excavate and reinstall. The builder ate all these charges because they simply didn't identify that the excavator was contractually obligated to cover his own exposed soil and backcharge him. These before and after pictures are from 2 different sets of houses right across the street from each other with the same builder, same excavator. Luckily, this event was so costly to the builder, though, it actually helped them identify who was actually at fault and recoup some costs. I do not see many companies looking back to see what happened and putting the money to where it should be in your contracts, not in wasted erosion control measures. Follow the plan. This builder did a great job prepping a site. There's vegetation. They have ground stabilization across the whole site. Installing protection looks great. Looks like they're prepared and on track to be compliant and following plans to the T. Then all that went out the window because someone didn't account for a soil that would have to be removed. And of course, keeping the stormwater facility protected also was not important. We went back and reinstalled the fence after, of course, having to clean out the stormwater runoff area, etc. If you have a plan, follow it all the way through. If you don't have a plan, get one. Okay, this is an important one. Recognize erosion control over sediment control. It's pretty straightforward. but is what most builders don't get. Recognize the difference. Not allowing the erosion to happen, to control the settlement once erosion happens. Not allowing the site to get to this point is key. If you allow for your catch basins to look like this all summer, saving a good deal of money not doing any cleaning, when it rains, that catch basin insert will blind or clog and start flooding. This was right outside the builder's model home, so of course they had to clean it up immediately. You'll spend a good amount of money later on when the catch basin inserts get blinded or clogged with silt, muck, that it falls in, blocks the storm drain, then floods your street, and you have to pay for a vac truck to come and extract the insert from the bottom of the vault. This cost saving by the builder in the beginning ending up costing them much more in the long run. There are some measures here, but the soil is still uncovered, which of course leads to this huge amount of turbidity going right into the storm drain, even with check dams. When really the builder should have put the erosion control measures in place, getting the exposed soil covered first, then the wattles, then the silt fence, then the sandbags to hold down the wattles. Make it a line item. One of the biggest things I have noticed while working with builders of single family and multifamily dwellings is they're almost surprised and caught off guard by erosion events. Make it a line item. What do I mean by that? Well, when you build a house, you factor in all the points for it. You get a framer, cabinet guy, drywall guy, maybe not the drywall guy from the beginning. You get bids. What I do not see at all with any of the builders is that they seem to be surprised when a weather event happens, or at the least trying to make it through with little to no cost for erosion measures. I think this is the biggest area of cost savings a builder can do. Get ahead of it. Budget a certain amount for what might happen and be prepared. Embrace the fact that you might not be able to get away from using the non-compliant trade, not having an on-site manager, not having a plan. Just about every builder I work with experiences this. These builders realize that erosion happens. They know there is a cost of doing business in our area and that a certain level of erosion is going to happen. It rains all the time. I am simply amazed by the companies that allow these measures to be taken only after an inspector calls them out. Note the silt making it through the fence in the upper right corner of this picture. Once called out, the builder has to then get emergency schedule, increasing the cost for the erosion measures. I'm not sure what they were thinking would happen building on this slope with a protected stream below it without the proper BMPs in place. Silt fence wasn't enough here. That's a huge slope to have all that bare soil. My favorite picture of this whole presentation. It's a classic. The builder made the attempt to make it a line item, but then they left it on the shelf. There's a lot of bales of straw here for ground coverage, and they're just growing vegetation. In closing, you can see there are many ways a builder can save money. What I've represented here is just a few things that stood out to me. If a builder can work on any of these 10 tips I've laid out, they will surely be able to save costs. Even a small amount of savings per unit can be great when you have an aggressive target, as some of these home builders have. These should be thought of together. If you stay productive, maintain profitability, and be compliant all at the same time, we will all benefit from your efforts. This has been Erosion Control Practices with Josh McAllister, Clark County Cecil Services. Thank you very much.
I'm Russell Betteridge. I'm with the City of Tukwila. I want to thank the Washington Stormwater Center and City of Vancouver and the Department of Ecology for allowing me to put this together and present this today. Been involved in pollution control for a very long time, and it's a pleasure to share this. So I'm going to talk about it in 3 aspects: the planning, the application, and the resolution to pollution prevention. We're going to get into kind of how to address this. On Friday, we heard from Royce about the pollutant processes and the actions that contractors in construction can cause pollutants. We heard from Maddie about the specific actions to avoid those pollutants. And then from Mike, we heard about how expensive those incidents can be. There was one story Mike was telling about steel crew that was, stop work for a whole week and had to do nothing but erosion control. Josh was really good at showing us kind of the horror stories of some of the spills and other things that happen in construction projects. And if you just have a plan together, it's much easier. Like Josh said, you can't expect your crews to do something they haven't been trained to do. So first off, what is pollution? So the definition of this comes to us from the Federal Clean Water Act. All the local jurisdictions have to meet the federal minimum. We all put in what's called an illicit discharge code, and that name, that word is really there because illegal discharge was already used in the wastewater system. So they can't have two federal terms to mean two different things. So they had to come up with something new. I've had complaints from people saying, oh, you're just making up words. It's like, no, we had to use this term because it was the federally required term. So what I'd put together for my city and what I use is a document like this, and it shows the code really simply. It shows, at the bottom, it's really hard to read on this screen, I know, but there's 3 parts to that code. There's the discharge prohibitions, and we heard about Royce, how just about everything is a pollutant now. And I'll talk about that in a second, but there are 2 other sections to this code. There's allowable discharges and there's conditional discharges. And so in conditional discharges, if you're, constructing a water main and you've got to burn the pipe out with chlorine, you need to make sure that when you're getting rid of that water, that chlorine is gone, the pH is adjusted, and you're not moving sediment with all that water you're flushing down. And so to get further into this list here, it's pretty comprehensive, and every community is going to have a slightly different list. Every community has the right to put in other things that they see that are a problem. And in Tukwila, what happened was they combined a lot of things to make the list somewhat shorter. So like they combined chlorine, bromine, and other disinfectants, other things on here, domestic animal waste, recreational vehicle waste, animal carcasses. Sometimes we found that around vet clinics, people have to pick up their deceased pet and unfortunately don't know what to do with it. So, there's lots of things on here, but the very last one on the list is the most important. Whatever they've listed, whatever city's listed, any other process associated discharge except as otherwise allowed. And that's those 2 other sections, the allowable discharges, things like groundwater, things like surfacing, like springs and stuff like that. Anything else that's not listed is not allowed. So that's where we get the tagline that only rain down the drain, right? Now in the wastewater system, that illegal discharge, it develops kind of the same type of information. We have a flyer, it goes out to people to not flush pollution down the toilet. And this is important for builders too. You don't want a brand new sewer system clogged full of paint. You don't want it, backed up full of mud. You got to make sure that all of your systems are done. So when you're cleaning up, really, it's thinking about actually cleaning up, not washing down. Too many times people say, oh, I'm cleaning up, and they got the hose out and all they're doing is washing it down. So in that planning process, you're planning to handle spills, wastes, and other construction processes that you have. Things like a kitchen countertop. A lot of people are going granite these days. If you're wet sawing or wet sanding that granite, what are you doing with the water and the sanding waste that's coming off of that? Be planning for that. Have that spill plan. Train your staff on what that plan looks like. Get everybody back to work sooner. As a regulator, I hate showing up and stopping the work because it just makes the weather more effective in destroying their site. The sooner they're stabilized, the sooner they're gone, the sooner they're fully built, the better, right? So train your crews on whatever plan you come up with. Kind of an example of a plan is here. You see in that first instance is identify the spill situation. Like we heard from Josh, those guys in the truck driving around, they didn't even recognize there was a problem, even when they were driving through their own waste, okay? They didn't know that a spill was coming out of the back of their vehicle. The street was probably black when they were first going. They turned around and suddenly the street's white. They got to know that, right? One great exercise for that is everybody knows the FedEx logo, right? But have you seen the arrow in the FedEx logo? Well, now you have. And once you teach people what to look for, they're going to see it. And now you got to teach them the response. So the rest of that response, we'll get into some of the planning examples more. You know, carrying a spill kit, that's important for whatever tools and equipment you use. You know, if you've got gasoline, you need a spill kit for that. If it's a small gasoline tank, if it's a small hand carried tank, then you need a small kit. If it's a bigger tank, you need a bigger kit. If you have other materials, like if you're going to be putting down fiberglass, if you're going to be putting down, you know, lots of glue that day, you need a spill kit that manages that. If your processes include things like acids or bases, or, you know, I got a complaint one time where the sidewalk was being washed with muriatic acid. And, you know, the crews at that instance, they had the right equipment, but they weren't using it for everybody. They weren't blocking off the sidewalk. They weren't ready for that. So here you've got a concrete system coming in. You know you're pouring. Better have the eco pants showing up. Here it's being delivered right when they're pouring. Okay, don't forget that pumper truck too. And if you're pumping across ground, I saw a guy had 2x4s set up with lined plastic under each joint along the line. So wherever there might have been a leak in that line that was pumping concrete, he was ready for it. You know, here your delivery of the generators coming in, have your spill pit, have your spill ground pad ready. You see the berms up, have that ready so that when that device is delivered, here you go. You're already covered with a spill containment system, right? Take pictures too. Document what you're doing to protect yourself. Not only in the contract, like Josh was saying, to back charge people. Not only are you proving that, hey, we spent this money, here's how we spent it. But if somebody comes back, you know, months after your construction project is done and they're saying, hey, you polluted, you can pull out your documents and say, no, I didn't. Right. So the application of these methods is really simple. It's your business. Like we heard Maddie say on Friday, you know your business best. You know what you're about to do in your construction project. You even know, hey, I'm calling the drywall guys out this week. I better make sure I have a place for them to clean their tools out, right? If you know those processes and equipment, and I preach this all the time because rental equipment, you get a rental excavator and it shows up with leaks, send it back. Or, have a spill kit ready to wrap those leaks so that you can continue your work without polluting at all. If you just wrap that leaking hose with a spill pad, it'll work for a while. Keep your eyes on it, make sure it's not dripping, get a new spill pad on it, all right? If you have that spill kit for each process you're doing, include a report form, include a pen in there as well. So your staff knows, train them, fill out this form when it happens. Take a picture of what you guys did. Take a picture of the bad and the good. Take the clean picture as well. Have that larger kit on site. There's no kit big enough, right? Make sure you have that person to call who has that larger kit, who can bring in those larger resources. Have that cleanup contractor ready, right? And train your subcontractors, right? Make sure that your plan is on the job board. If you don't have a job board, put one up. Make sure everybody going onto the site knows the rules of your site. If they don't know the rules, I mean, if you do something simple like wear your hard hat, you see a guy without a hard hat, you know he didn't stop by your job board. All right, so a little further in, some examples here. They're just using the booms to contain that spill. Spills happen, it's gonna happen. Just keep them small. It's easier to clean up a small spill than it is to be chasing paint for a week on the street. All right, when you have that spill, you wanna make sure your employees are protected. You see the gloves, you see the eye protection on this guy. Make sure you've got some PPE ready in your spill kit, okay? And here they've got the BioZorb. There's a bunch of different spill materials. Make sure your spill material, your spill kit includes the type of material you need to clean up. You don't want to use the wrong spill material on a spill. So here, like the red shovel, that's a plastic shovel that's designed to just be thrown away. If you have a spill material that's so bad, once you use a shovel, it's going to be on the shovel and you can't get it off. Plan on throwing that spill shovel away. Here's an example of a spill contractor coming in. You get started with your smaller spill kit. call these people in and they can help you with the larger response. Now, what you don't want is a situation that winds up on the news, or in this case, on the front cover of the Western Washington Stormwater Management Manual, right? This is an aerial view shot by King 5. It was on the TV, and so the Department of Ecology put it on the cover of their manual. So the prevention resolution part of it, that means providing that documentation. I talked about having that spill report form. You know, you can make it really simple. It can just be a sheet of paper that just says spill report on the top, and have your crews, you know what they have to put on that piece of paper, or you can line it out really detailed if you want. Making sure that you document that and then get that into the CSOL book for the site. If they have that in their SWIP, then a regulator like me that shows up to review a SWIP, if it's a really clean site, it's a really quick review. If I see spill reports, we know people understand the rules. They are seeing the spills because we've got documentation of them, and they're cleaning up those spills. They're not just covering them up with a bunch of bark. Okay, so when you have the documents, it's easy for me to just close up that investigation and move on. So here we talked about that, developing that plan. Here they had the 6 steps down for it. At the end there, the documentation. Take those photos. That's a really important part of having that. Make sure you take the good photo, the last photo that shows the entire site is clean, or the silt fence is stood back up, or the bark bags are refreshed and the street's clean. Or, if you just have a library of bad situations, people are going to go, okay, well, did you actually fix it? If you don't have the proof that you actually fixed it, it's going to be hard. Here's that documentation process. You might want a clipboard in there. You might want, absolutely a pen and the spill report form. You see this guy's got his PPE on while he's filling this thing out. Sometimes waterproof paper on your spill report form is really handy. If it's raining out and a pencil, you can still use that report form and stick it back in the bag. Take credit for your work. Go to US Green Building Council. There's also EnviroStars. Go to those companies and tell them, hey, this is how we run our business. We run it to protect the environment. Take credit for that. That's also a benefit to your company as advertising. Okay, you get listed with them and people like your company automatically. So some more resources for this. To develop a SWIP, there's the EPA. This really kind of feeds in. Everybody has to meet the minimum standards. King County has a little bit more. I know other counties add their little bits to these types of agreements. There's the Western Washington Stormwater Management Manual for construction sites. There's the guide. You can meet construction stormwater general permit requirements. There's the manual itself. There's the surface water design manual for Appendix D. This is all about, erosion control and pollution prevention. If you need further assistance for that, it's easy to go and find that. So again, to tie this up from Friday, we saw all of those pollutants and all of those processes that create them. You know your business best. You can plan, know before you go. You know what you're going to be doing. You have that project schedule. You know what you're going to be doing in 3 months, hopefully. You know what you're going to be doing in 6 months. You know what you're going to be doing the whole time you're working on that job. Plan, know before you go, have that resource, have your crews trained. If you got new guys coming on, if you got subcontractors coming on, make sure they have that plan. Make sure they also have that resource. If they don't have spill kits, hey, have one on the site right below the job board. Put it in a big barrel. There it is. They can use yours. They throw their spill kit right back in the barrel. Okay, that's the application, training and using it, right? Once they use it, they got to tell you they used it. If you show up and your spill kit's empty, oh yeah, it's a hard time. You can't, now you got to call your contractor in, right? You can't respond because somebody else has already used your spill kit. I mean, it's good that they used it, but you got to refresh that. So then show you did it. The resolution of this is to really document that process, get it in the CSOL book, make sure the SWIP is complete with how you cleaned it, show the what, where, and when of all of this work that you're doing. It's good work. And, like Josh was saying, make sure it's a line item, bill for it. don't let it go so bad that, you know, you've got work delays like Mike was talking about. You know, you've got contractors running over contractors causing problems. If you document everybody's process and tightly control this, it's going to go way faster. Your job's going to be done and you're going to be more profitable. So with that, I'll hand it back to Maddie. And I think I've got some more slides to show. Oh yeah, some more information. That's me hanging off a rope down on the lower Duwamish, putting in some spill materials. That was a fun one, working with the Coast Guard. And we want to thank Department of Ecology for their Healthy Homes and Healthy Waters project that funded this.